Let's be honest, my video output last year was pretty dire. 4 videos for the whole year obviously wasn't my intention, but that's life. Things don't always go to plan. It's true that I had some health issues that affected my energy and drive, but when I did have better times, I prioritised my love of photography, being in the woods on my own, and of course launching the 617 Club. I'm still not 100%, but I'm certainly feeling more sprightly and motivated again. So I'd like to use the dawn of a new year to give me a fresh start, to reignite my passion projects, to fuel the fantastic community that we've built with the 617 Club, and even refresh my identity in line with how my photography has evolved in recent years. So today I'd like to revisit an old friend, talk a bit about creativity, New Year's resolutions, evolution and all that stuff. So let's go for a walk in the woods and have a bit of a chat. By the time you're watching this, it's probably well into January, but earlier this month I was thinking about New Year resolutions and why do we have them? Do I want to make any resolutions myself? I wouldn't mind betting that your social media feed was bombarded with posts by people talking about how they're going to somehow better themselves this year. Even our doormats are littered with flyers from Slimming World just to make us feel a little bit more self-conscious or guilty for that indulgence that, to be honest, you deserved over the festive period. But the year ahead is uncertain, and sometimes circumstances will go against everything that you promised to yourself. I say just ignore the bombardment of changes that we're supposed to make at this time of year. You know, what's wrong with just being comfortable with who we are, where we are, accepting that sometimes shit happens and that change should only come when it needs to, not because social pressure has dictated it. I came across this quote recently which sums it up quite nicely. It's partly why I don't like New Year's resolutions. We live in a culture that celebrates impossible perfection. We are repeatedly fed the lie that aspiration and ambition can only ever be grounded in our lust for unobtainable things. New cars, new clothes, new homes, new selves, when in fact, we can motivate ourselves in a different way, by seeking to find contentment in the expression of our truest selves as we already are. We can be happy by learning to live with and even honouring our imperfections. They do not always need eradicating. We do not need to buy something to make them disappear. That's by Elizabeth Day. That resonated with me because I know from experience that self-imposed pressure and perfectionism is debilitating and stressful. Too many times I've agonised and beaten myself up because something hasn't gone as well as I thought it could and should do. The effect of which is that everything that you said you were going to do never gets done because of procrastination and fear of not living up to your own exacting standards. As they say, done is better than perfect. So I need to remind myself more often that perfect is actually the enemy of good enough. That being said, I make no apologies for my traits. Many of my most memorable images have been created through being committed to a vision. Yes, photography is about enjoying yourself, but for some people, it means so much more. And when you're devoting so much emotion into your art and craft, it's easy for the scales to tip out of your favour. I'd like this year to be the year that things get done. As I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we can still strive for excellence without compromising enjoyment. One thing has remained a constant throughout my career as a photographer, and that's protect the passion for photography and creative fulfillment will naturally fall into place. I've been reminding myself of that recently by concentrating my time and energy on places that make me feel good, rather than just those that are more likely to give me a portfolio image more readily. One certainly isn't dependent upon the other, and I think we can all benefit from realising that being creative is about so much more than our expected output. I enjoy using my time over the festive period as an excuse to reflect on how things have gone creatively, take a critical look at the work that I've done, think about what's given me the most satisfaction, and use the personal insights to inform how I want to move forward. I think the key thing is to have an idea of what you'd like to achieve, but just don't beat yourself up if it doesn't go to plan. Some people don't like looking back and always have their eyes on what's ahead, but every time I take a relaxed retrospective, interesting insights come to the surface which sparks new ideas. For example, I presented my Beyond the Trees talk to our 617 Club members recently, which is full of observations and common threads that I've identified over the years. You know, granted, as someone who teaches and needs to articulate how I think as a photographer, you could argue that there's more benefit into delving a little deeper into the whys and wherefores. However, I think any photographer who is perhaps working on a project, seeking more meaning in their work, or wants something more than only nice images can benefit from the occasional mining of their own thoughts. However, I do think that this needs to be balanced with allowing things to just take their natural course rather than being too regimented. After all, it's often the case that the magic happens when we're not thinking too hard about what we see, but instead let our feelings guide us and put trust in our instinct. As someone with gut problems, I should probably listen to them more often. Right, it's getting a little bit chilly, so let's keep on moving. So what have I learnt from my least productive year in all my years as a photographer? When I say least productive, I mean fewer images, fewer standout images, less income, and obviously fewer videos. Despite that, I'm very content with my photography. In fact, I'd say that I love woodland photography as much as I ever have, and I think that's for one simple reason. How I've pursued photography in recent months has reminded me of my days out in the woods with Meg 10 years ago. No expectations, no social media, no pressure to produce, just explorations in new places where experience, immersion, solitude and discovery trump all else. Interestingly, it means I've spent a lot more time in woodlands which are comparably more complex and difficult to work with, and the character of the woodland is giving a slightly different look, a different aesthetic. And all that is inconsequential, of course, if you just enjoy being there. You know, satisfying new work will organically follow when a place puts you in the right headspace, no matter how difficult it might first appear. But how I think and feel about woodland photography fundamentally hasn't changed in the past 10 years, but things evolve, and what you thought was right back then might not sit quite so well with you today. It was 9 years ago when I first photographed this tree here, which turned out to be one of my most recognised images, Afraid of Time. The experience of photographing it and the stories which surround it was so unique and special that it became part of my brand identity. As it turns out, the title was more apt than I first realised. Several years should be nothing in the life of an oak tree, but look at what remains now. I still love the image and look back at it fondly, but I'm not sure the remains of this very special species is now a fitting identity for me. I no longer photograph decay and struggling trees as a reflection of how I once felt a little broken. But for some time now, I've looked for positive, even poetic interpretations of light, shape, colour, and community. I don't typically create dark and foreboding images. It's just not how I feel, no matter what type of woodland I visit. Every tree-filled space is a joy to me. So I think my identity needs to reflect that. With that in mind, I hope you like my new logo. Now I know some of you are going to love the addition of Meg. She has and always will be a symbol of my photography. I don't see how I would have become a woodland photographer without her. Having Meg silhouetted under a grand old living tree feels much more like me. Now I'm sure some of you couldn't care less about a photographer's logo, but I think the point here is that thing that I've mentioned before, the creative thread. It's all those thoughts, feelings and motivations that underpin everything that you do. It's the reason why you get out of bed at 5 a.m, where you go, what you photograph, what you say and how you say it. It's the thread that ties everything together into a cohesive whole and puts the you in your photography. I hope you like my new logo and the sentiment of this video. If you've got any suggestions on how to just get things done, stop procrastinating and stressing over perfection, then please enlighten us all in the comments below. My next couple of videos are already planned, start as you mean to go on and all that, so I hope you continue to follow me and Meg this year. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. I'll be back soon to share some new work, but actually keep watching now and I'll show some of my recent images. But thanks again, and I'll see you soon.